You are listening to The Real Men Feel Show with your hosts, Andy Grant and Appio Hunter. Real Men Feel encourages men to allow and express all of their emotions. Despite what you may have been taught, all emotions do serve you. Real Men Feel is committed to engaging in discussions that most men aren't having, but you don't need to be a man to join us. The Real Men Feel Show is produced live each Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern for your growth and enjoyment. Listen to us on podcast platforms including iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. You can also watch the show on YouTube by visiting realmenfeel.org/YouTube. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe on iTunes by visiting realmenfeel.org/iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at realmenfeelorg and on Facebook, facebook.com/realmenfeelshow. All links mentioned in each episode are in the show notes found on the blog at realmenfeel.org. Show your support for Real Men Feel by shopping at realmenfeel.org/swag, by visiting digitaltipjar.com/realmenfeel, or even text us a tip. You can show some love for Real Men Feel by texting Real Men Feel, that's all one word, to 504-226-5306. You'll receive a link back to complete your tip and choose the amount. This is a weekly program, and your reviews, comments, feedback, and participation are welcome during the live show and anytime in our Facebook group, on Twitter, or at realmenfeel.org. Now, let's dive into this week's show. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Real Men Feel. This is your host, Andy Grant. And once again, the Real Men Feel Show is brought to you by the Good Men Project. Visit goodmenproject.com for an ongoing conversation of what it means to be a man in the 21st century. You know, the topic today is something I knew I wanted to talk about a couple months ago. Back on April 4th, we had to put my dog down, my dog Sadie, my three-legged shelter dog. And I immediately wrote a post for the Good Men Project about the connection, the emotional bond between men and dogs that I've seen in myself, that I've seen in neighbors and friends and people in pop culture, or just all over the place. But I knew I couldn't talk about it that soon. I needed this gap of time, or else this would just be me as a blubbering mess, which I've done plenty of those shows, but I kind of like to get away from that every now and then. But literally just minutes before the show, I came across a video that I'd been looking for years, and it was still live on YouTube, but it was a video of a 5-month-old three-legged puppy named Sadie at the pound, at the shelter that we got her from. And I literally found it 15 minutes ago, and I was on the verge of tears just watching this 1 minute of this puppy playing again. And, there'll never be a day where I won't have some emotion showing up for this. And I also realized, well, good, because I don't want that day to come, but I've had enough distance that I can talk about this. So that's what we're doing. So this is just, it's a discussion, me and some other men talking about our feelings, our relationships, our lessons from dogs. So joining me tonight are two guys from the private Real Men Feel Facebook group. We have Richard and Sean. So Richard, why don't you say hello?
Hey, everyone.
And
Good
Sean?
to be here.
Yep.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
Cool. So again, we had to put my dog Sadie down in April, and it was June 5 years ago that we got her. And last June, she began having seizures, just these epileptic seizures that I didn't know dogs had, but they have grand mal seizures. And she made it for another 9 months before they weren't stopping, and we finally had to put her down. But I know, Richard, you lost your dog even more recently, right?
Yeah, just under 5 weeks, actually. And
Wow.
a puppy.
Oh my God!
Not even 2 years old. 6 days under 2 years old.
And was that a sudden thing? Did you know something was up, or?
No clue. Adopted this little boy. He's the third of my 3 By Blue Shelties. So I have 2 others. They are 5 and 6 years old. And so we had Sterling Blue that I adopted. Our breeder is in Nashville area, and we got all 3 from her. So I flew to Nashville to pick him up September 2 years ago because it was too hot in Arizona to fly them under cabin. So I had to go and transport him. So just fell in love with him there. And believe it or not, the color he was, like almost all silver, I have been seeking for about 30 years to get that color. It's by blue, Sheltie. All of mine are by blue, but the oldest is mostly black and white. The other one is half black and half gray. They all have a little white, but they have no tan on them. That distinguishes the by blue. But I had a Sheltie years ago who was a blue merle. He had a little bit of tan on him. But his brother, when I adopted Conrad many years ago now, was a by blue, and I've wanted one ever since. They're a little hard to find, that all silver color. So I got him. He was the life of the party in our house. The energy changed, the high vibration so high I can't even begin to describe. He got the other two boys going. He kept my partner Cameron and I going. Very high energy. So, answer your question. Did I know? No. So I think it was Friday, about almost 5 weeks ago, and he didn't come to the bathroom when I got up first thing in the morning because they'll tend to come in and say hello. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. And so I went and checked on him, and I could tell he wasn't feeling good. And so it was like a matter of 6 days later we put him down. So there's quite a bit to the story there that week, but yeah, it was sudden. Had no clue he was sick.
Wow.
6 days later, we found out after going through some tests that week that he had a rare acute form of leukemia. And so I was at work when I got that final word and just made a decision we were going to have to put him down that week or that day, and just devastated. I could barely, I was just sobbing uncontrollably. Went and talked to my manager, let her know what was going on. I couldn't even talk for a while. She said, "Richard, what's going on?" I was hugging her. I know her very well, and just crying as hard as anyone can cry. And I couldn't even get the words out for a bit. And she said, "Richard, what's going on? You're scaring me." I was just holding her so tight because I knew I was losing my baby. Awful.
And Sean, you have healthy live dogs at the moment. I'm not.
I do. I have a 5-year-old golden retriever and a 10-year-old Jack Russell who has had many lives.
Well, cool. Then you'll help keep this from being just a wake. So I really want to, I talked about it. Richard, you're already right there sharing it. I've been shocked by the amount of grief I've had over dogs compared to people. Is that an experience that you guys have had too?
It is. Yeah.
So why do you think that is?
To me, there's a soul connection, really strong. And first of all, I'm totally fine with your topic, men and dogs. For me, I cannot really call my children dogs. To me, they're my boys. So I even hear my partner, and I don't say anything about it. It's like, whatever dog. It's like, how can you call him a dog? I don't do that with mine. I occasionally have to refer, but even like talking to strangers, I'll say my boys, and they kind of have to figure out, if I'm a gay male and I'm like in my 60s, that I may not have small boys, but they kind of have to figure it out. But here's a good example of what you're saying. I think my Sheltie from about a little over 20 years ago now, totally like soulmate, I felt like. He was 13 and a half years, was sick, and we had to put him down. So that was a tremendous loss to me. I had just moved to Boise about the year before. And 6 months after I put Conrad down, I lost my dad in December, and 9 weeks later, my mom. So 3 major losses, and they were both in their 60s. So the loss of my dog was tougher than even like my mom, who I was extremely close. It was just a different loss.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was horribly painful. But there was something different about my boy.
Yeah, I lost my dad last August, and this Father's Day, just a couple weeks ago, I was thinking more of Sadie than my dad, and I was like, "Wow, this is really bizarre. This is the weekend I'm supposed to be thinking about how much I miss my dad, isn't it?" But it's all dog that's there for me. So, so Sean, what's the connection been like with your current dogs or past relationship with dogs for you?
It's varied. It's been, unfortunately been through several dogs over the years. The one of them really hit me, and it hit me very strangely. I had a dog when I was in high school, and come from a family of four. The dog became mine. I don't know how. And if you have these interesting relationships with the dog. I take the dog to bed. The dog would get on my bed as I'm getting ready for bed, and then I just snap my fingers. Dog, get off the bed. It was a big golden retriever, single bed. So I get into bed. The golden retriever get into bed, and nobody moved the rest of the night. So, so she was my dog, and I went away to university, and it was shortly after I got my first job, which was away from home, and just chatting with my family about it. Oh yeah, we had to put down the dog, and I was like, okay, you didn't even tell me you were going to put down the dog, and it didn't really hit me then. But the girl I was dating at the time came to visit me that weekend and gave me a little beanie dog. And man, I bawled my eyes out for, must have been an hour, just to really, miss the dog. And, it was just such a surprise, I guess, to lose a dog. When I've had to put down dogs, unfortunately, and those, it's very sad, but it was more different that it was a surprise for me. So.
Yeah, the first dog I had as an adult, with me and my wife getting, we don't have kids, so I get Richard's point of, no, there are boys, and and so our dog Homer, we had a hound dog for 10 years, and he left the yard for the first time since he was a puppy, and was struck by a car in front of our house.
Oh,
And that was devastating. Like, as rough as putting Sadie down was, that instant shock and was way more horrible. Like, it took God at least 8 weeks before I could drive back into my driveway and not see that body laying there still. It was just so consciously, and after that, like, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't have pictures of my dog around. Say it was only once Homer was gone that we'd put up pictures and stuff and celebrated. And I wrote a blog post about all the lessons I had learned, and it became an ebook, and then it turned into it became a chapter in a book by Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Heart. So once we got Sadie, who was just, again, this three-legged, just bouncing piece of resilience, that's why, oh my God, that's my next dog. As soon as I saw that video I mentioned earlier, part of the vow I made as growing as a pet owner was, I'm not going to wait till you're gone to celebrate you, and do a daily card. And Sadie became a star on social media, and I heard from all sorts of people that noticed we will miss Sadie, and people had never even commented about it while she was around. But no, I looked at it every day, and that was such a cool thing. So that's one of the things that I've learned and grown in my relationships. But yeah, that gut-wrenching shock value of losing anyone you love, suddenly, and
right.
And the tragedy is just so different. So yeah, and Sean, your story reminds me of when I was in college, the dog I grew up with, died while I was away at college. So it just seemed like, oh, okay, it was weird. I didn't have the grief until I went home and just kept, hey, where's Pal? Where's Pal? What's going on?
Yeah.
Very bizarre. So my theory about, men and dogs is that it comes down to unconditional love. right? The dog loves you. You know, you can be playing ball with him, or you can have just been yelling at them, and they, you know, anything bad goes right off their back. They don't hold grudges. They don't cheat on you. They don't turn on you. They don't gossip about you. They don't bully you. Just, you know, just especially growing up as a kid, like really a dog can really feel like your best friend at times. But I've been shocked seeing in myself, in friends, in family, in guys that just don't show emotion are emotional with their dogs.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Andy. You know, because you're right. The dog will always love you. It's always there. Always wants to play, and you know whether you yelled at it or whatever. It's like, okay, I'm ready. You know, my wife gets all upset at times. You know, when people come over and the dog is just there. It's like, come on, just I'm here, happy to see you.
Yeah,
They're happy to see everybody, which is kind of scary because if somebody comes in to rob the house, I'm sure the dog would be there. Sure, I'll help you.
So, I don't want to diminish women and connection to dogs or pets or anything, but while I want to focus on men, it's like I'm not sure if it's, you know, men are encouraged to show emotions with dogs, or just it's the one area of life we're not shamed for doing so.
Well, the dog doesn't give a damn.
Right?
The dog's happy all the time. So whether you are or not, the dog's happy. And I think, I know for me, it helps draw you out because, you know, if somebody is happy in your space, it makes it easier for you to be happy.
Right. That whole contagious energy and emotion. Right.
Yeah.
And Andy, also, just recently, you know, talking with one of my customers in retail that, you know, about the loss of Sterling, was talking about her husband. His father had passed away and never cried, and then when his dog died, it's like he's just sobbing. You know, so it kind of goes with that same theory. What you're saying there is like, you know, men just have that connection and release, you know, with the pet over even our parents or our father. Like pretty much the same situation with you. I'm sure you know had maybe different experience with your dad, but that he didn't cry, but he did with his pet.
So, why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it is what you said earlier, truly that unconditional love. With people, there seems to always be some type of condition, no matter how good the relationship is. It seems like it's just, I mean, what person, no matter how fondly you think of them, have you really had an unconditional experience the whole way through? And the dogs truly are unconditional. They, you know, I mean, you can beat them and they're going to be back unconditionally. You know, I can remember back, sadly to say, more in graduate school, and I was going through a horrible emotional time, and I had two different dogs at different times then. And, you know, looking back on it, I was abusive to them. And I wouldn't ever consider myself that I would be abusive, but it was just trying to do discipline. But I didn't really know, like poor parenting as a young parent or whatever. You know, remember the one, for example, you know, and very ashamed to say this, but you know, where they chewed up like one of the lawn chairs outside, and like I just folded it and like just shook it. Don't do this, you know. That was very abusive. And I remember my neighbor said, you know, if I see you doing that again, I'm going to call the authorities. You know, but I didn't consider myself abusive, but I was really, you know, tough. Well, I was emotionally going through so much pain, and I was actually suicidal because I was in graduate school in a religious institution. My undergraduate degree was in religion. I was coming out gay, so I was torn to pieces of who the hell was I, and feeling pain. And I do not know, and I'll share this, and this is just one of those secrets you don't tell hardly anybody. It's like, I don't know why I had so much pain. I remember wanting to just stab my dog. And I would never want to hurt them, ever. But that was feelings I had. It was some kind of feeling. I don't know why it went to the dog. because I was not angry at the dog. I just remember that was a feeling from my depression and suicidal tendencies at that time.
No, well, thanks for sharing that, because that's I've been depressed and suicidal, and part of the amazing thing is the dog that doesn't care, and being home alone and crying, and my dog finds me and puts the head on the lap and looks at you like, "What's the matter, Andy?" But I could also I don't recall having an experience like you just described, but I'd be surprised if I didn't. And again, it's a way to hurt yourself by striking out at something that loves you unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I've tried to push humans away at times like that. So yeah, I probably tried to push the dog away too. Like, don't you love me? I'm unlovable, right?
Yeah. There was nothing against the dog at all. I just remember having that thought. I didn't like it at the time. I don't like it now. I don't know if I've ever even told anybody that ever. But that was thoughts I had, and I love those two dogs, and it was a different kind of relationship than I have with them now as an older adult. I remember one, like the relationship I was in at the time, my first real relationship, and the dog chewed up a carton of my partner's cigarettes and said, "That dog's got to go." And I got rid of that dog. I would never do that now. I ended up taking him to Tennessee, and my aunt took him in, or took her in, rather, her. And but I'd never do that today. But just really tough emotional time for me during that time period.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's like the old cliche of looking for love in all the wrong places, right?
Yeah. And they weren't afraid of me, like I was abusive, like they were afraid of me or anything like that. But I saw some things where I was trying to be, discipline them, but I wasn't doing it in the best way like a new parent. But I loved them dearly as well.
So when you guys were growing up, we kind of touched on this a little bit already, but were you seeing older men or family members be emotional about the dogs?
I don't. The first dog that passed away was a beagle that we had. And I don't remember my father being emotional, but I do remember that it seemed crazy at the time. My father put the dog in the car and took him to work and brought him home. And his explanation was, "This is our last ride," before we ended up burying her in the backyard together. So, he didn't show it, but, I could tell that there was something going on there.
Yeah. So he had more actions and kind of wanted some ritual and ceremony to kind of show off. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Richard, what about you growing up?
I don't really remember. I grew up in East Tennessee, and my perception of dogs, truly they'd be called dogs, if that, growing up, in my opinion, not my boys. And I remember having, I was probably in junior high, and wanted a dog, and I got one from my uncle's girlfriend. I really cared for the dog and probably wasn't being real responsible at that age of taking care of it. But we were in East Tennessee and way out in the country. And our neighbor down the street, not far at all, my dog had killed one or so of their chickens and told my parents about it. So my dad took the dog to a different neighborhood and just dropped it off. So I lost that dog. And, just going back to the feelings, this neighbor, is either him or his brother, ended up killing his brother. And I'm thinking, oh my God, my neighbor killed his brother. My dog killed their chicken, and I lost my dog. And kind of interesting. I'm really kind of seeing a lot of loss throughout time. Maybe it's kind of come to me. Maybe this is some kind of a message for me. I'm getting it as I speak of some of the loss. And there's another tragic loss I had with, I'll just share it real quickly. before I got these 3 sets, after my first Sheltie that I was like soulmate about 20 some years ago, it took me 7 years before I got another dog. Part of it was my partner. And I'll share this. I wanted and this will share a little more of my feelings with the dogs or my boys. I wanted a dog so bad, I was willing to leave my partner. And he kept saying no. I would search occasionally, and I found one at a pet store in Florida. And he kind of fell in love with the puppy as well. We got the puppy. He came to us from Florida, Pennsylvania to Phoenix. And on the way from the airport, something was wrong with the dog. I could tell he was like 8 weeks old. And got him home, and he was having some bleeding. And I started researching that till about 2 in the morning. I was exhausted. The puppy and I was exhausted. I put him to bed there beside the bed, and woke in the morning, and I thought, oh, he's resting. And I kept looking, but I don't see him breathing. So that little long story short, he was dead of parvo. We had him 8 hours, and that was about almost 8 years ago.
Wow.
So.
Yeesh.
I
lay off
waited 7
the
years.
tragic losses, my friend.
Yeah. So I really have a lot of nice, wonderful, good stories. It's just I'm really in grief with my current puppy I just lost. So, but I have amazing, fun stories. Joy, some of the best times of my life. So I should probably talk about some of those.
Wait, why I asked was so when I was one of the youngest memories I have is at the drive-in with my cousins and uncle and grandfather, and one of the opening movies back when drive-ins existed for people that weren't aware of them. They'd be like 3 or even 4 movies at a time, and one of the early ones was the old Disney movie Old Yeller.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and so that's the proper reaction if you've seen it.
Yes,
and it really comes down, it's about a boy and a dog, and I think is it Kurt Russell is the kid? Does that sound true?
I don't remember who the actors were.
It might be. Yeah.
Old Yeller was the star.
Yes, right, and there's some boy there getting in his way.
That's right.
But anyway, just to totally spoil it, Old Yeller dies at the end of the movie, and my uncle, a hunter, a drinker, a NASCAR fan, bawling in the car. My grandfather bawling in the car, and me and all my cousins, we're age, from 6 to 10, the bunch of us, we're all bawling. But then as soon as everyone noticed, it's I'm not crying, you're crying. No, a lot of onions in this car. Like all the covering up started.
Yeah.
So I learned both that, wow, so guys can cry at dogs, but then you have to bust each other's balls about it and pretend you weren't crying about the dog. But that was really the first time, and could be the only time I remember seeing my grandfather and my uncle both crying about the same thing, or if not at all. But so, Sean, you've seen Old Yeller. You responded to that.
I've seen Old Yeller. Yes.
And it's a guy.
And it's more than he died at the end. Come on, Andy.
I don't want to spoil it. And I don't. How many decades since I've seen it?
Yes, I know. That's an old movie.
Yeah, and that's surprising. I'm like, I don't know if that's ever been remaked. They reboot everything else. I'm surprised. I wonder if that would work these days.
Yeah, I don't know.
But so Rich,
enough action in that movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, they'd spice it up, right? Die Hard with Old Yeller, something like that. But yeah, so trying to think of like other times men and emotion were okay, and it was Old Yeller and Brian's song, which was about football players. So I could cry about it, losing a dog or losing a football player, and anything else was verboten. Right?
That was pretty much it. Yeah.
So, Richard, have you seen Old Yeller? Do you know that movie?
I have not. I've heard of it, of course. I haven't seen it, so I wrote it on my list.
Don't see it. Don't see it soon. I do not.
Don't see it soon. Yeah.
You don't need it.
Okay. I was suggested to see A Dog's Purpose, and I did see that after Sterling passed. It was tough to see at that time. So
yeah, I bet it always. Yeah.
So
Yeah, like so what do you instead of someone else's story, do you have a sense of any of your dog's purpose and how they impacted you?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
I do. My first Sheltie, Conrad, he was the one I told you passed before my mom and dad. We just had a strong soul connection. I think of him still every day. It's been about 14 years now since he passed. He did live a full life. We did a lot of things together. It's like he was truly a guardian angel in the flesh for me. That was going through, had gone through a relationship breakup, still dealing with kind of, who I am, moving into new relationship and things like that. And he was always there for me. If I was down, if I was upset, he was the one taking care of me. He truly was there for me. I mean, I loved him. I took really good care of him. But he was truly there for me. If I'm upset, he'd bring me a toy to play with and things. Pretty amazing. A relationship like I've had with no other. And just terrific. So purpose, being an angel there for me during a difficult time in my life, and we shared a lot of joy. Sterling, short period, and I mentioned, he truly instantly brought a joy into our home that like raised the vibration from like 10 to like 1,000, it seemed like. And it's missed. It's still missed. That vibration is just not here no matter how much joy. And so I'm still processing that. I hope to do some writing, maybe even a book about him and lessons I've learned from him during that short less than 2 years that I had with him. But the impact on me on a soul level is really strong. So I feel strongly there's a message I can't understand at all why he had to leave. I have been given a message from an animal communicator that he was an old soul and that his purpose was served here and that it would have not been productive for him to stay longer. That's all I have kind of so far. So I'm trying to figure all that out. And right now I'm just going with, not seeking any psychics or anything with it right now. I'm just trying to sort it out on my own for this time period. But I'd like to have some answers. So.
Cool. Yeah. And Sean, any top of mind, any lessons or purpose or special anything from any dog that you've ever had?
I don't think anything really sticks out to me, especially not with what Richard's been through. But, I think it's just really just to be always welcoming and happy. You look at how they treat people and how they treat you, no matter what's going on. And, I think that's the thing to remember for me.
Yeah. Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my dog Homer, again, having him for 10 years, it was during the time that I really, became an energy coach and got more spiritual and working with the Akashic records and stuff. And in his kind of last year that he was around, he had a weird little like tremor in his jaw. And every time I see that happen, I just had this like feeling from him that, oh, we're closer to the end than the beginning. And you're trying to let me know that, I guess. But then, the night we lost him, we have an invisible fence, and Homer would be out running around. It would just come scratch at the door when he wanted to come in, and he scratched at the front door. And my wife Lori was upstairs, and she didn't get right to it. She's like, she was finished whatever she was doing. She got up and opened the door, and he wasn't there, which is not a surprise. Sometimes we scratch and then see something and run away. Not a big deal. But then the phone rang, and someone asked, a friend of Lori's was driving by the house and said, "Where's Homer?" And she's like, "He's outside." And the neighbor starts crying already on the phone, saying, "It's the dog looks just like Homer on the street. I hope it's not him." And like, what? So Lori felt guilty, like because she didn't open the door fast enough, that's what killed Homer. So that's the first time I had ever consulted an animal communicator, like Richard mentioned. And, I talked to the animal communicator after I'd written this blog post about all the lessons I'd gotten, because overnight I was distraught, but I woke up like, all right, I want to focus on the joy, the gratitude, all the pleasantries, all the lessons from Homer, instead of, oh my God, this sucks and who did this. Like, Lori wanted to find, it was a hit and run. Lori wanted to go get the bastards. And I'm like, I didn't care at that point. I was just hurting. But anyway, the animal communicator said everything to me that I wrote in my blog, but it came from the dog's perspective. It was just really trippy, and said that Homer was a peace ambassador, and his work here was done, and he had other business to get to. Kind of sounds like what Richard, kind of the message you were getting. That so it was really first time I thought of. I've never consciously thought of dogs and souls, and I do see that humans kind of have an immortal soul, and we have missions before and after kind of what we're doing here now in these physical bodies. And so that first experience of getting that for the dog too helped me get over that tragic loss. But again, just amazing timing. And then another message was that Homer kept trying to tell me that he was going to leave, and I didn't want to hear it. That's what Homer said through the communicator. I was like, oh yeah, I can buy that. So I'm like, the hints I get, like, oh, I don't want to hear that. No, that must be years away. Don't say that to me, Homer, in my head, But and she also said that, and this is something that was really weird to hear, and I still, ponder it. That he chose to, like, Homer, chose to like run through the invisible fence, get his little shock, and chose to go get hit by a car. Wanted to leave that night.
Wow.
It was truly on some level. It's a conscious or subconscious choice of some level of his being to say, I've had enough of these humans. I've got things to do. I'm getting out of here. And I just never come across that.
Wow.
Have you heard of anything like that around any animal? Or
Well, the closest thing is what Richard was saying about his dog being old at 2 years old. Richard.
Yeah, an old soul is what I was told he was.
Yeah.
So Richard, have you had an animal communicator experience with any of your prior dogs?
No, just the three I have now, because the network of people, through Project Positive Change and things, there are several communicators. So more in the last probably year or two, but not previously. So, I think it's interesting though what you're saying, and what's coming to me, Andy, is that obviously our pets have a strong purpose, and we look at angels, other spirit guides, and things like this, and of course through your work you deal a lot with this, but I think their purpose is so strong for us, and maybe not every animal, but maybe so, or maybe we're just not in touch with it, or just kind of like people who are just happy to just live their life in a very simple way, that maybe that's their reason for being here and experiencing that life, versus someone's really ambitious, wanting to travel the world or whatever. And so maybe the same with pets and living different, like maybe a pet with a homeless person. I see that and I think, oh my God, that it's kind of sad, but how amazing that those two have connected and bonded. That maybe there's that reason, and just the same with us as humans. Like, how do we really know when it's time? And there's different reasons. People get killed in a car accident, and they go suddenly, or they're just sick for years. Like my mom was sick for 14 years. So just different situations. So maybe the same with the pets, and same like for yours, same with Sterling. Maybe it's just their time, and for whatever reason, and how they go in different ways, just like humans do.
I'm remembering now hearing, I think it's Abraham Hicks talking about wild animals just know when it's the end of their time, and they just, they'll just die. But our pets will often try to stick around longer because they know they mean something. So they don't always go out at their peak, which is kind of how they describe wild animals. They don't, you don't see lions and tigers in the wild gracefully aging old and being an elder, and they're like, no, they're, as soon as they start headed downhill from their prime, they don't last a hell of a lot longer. No. Whereas domesticated animals will, and often because we kind of make them even,
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, my Jack Russell's had a few extra lives along the way because she's been attacked by coyotes
Oh, wow.
3 times.
Ooh.
Yeah, I have no idea how she survived, but I'm glad she's still
Wow.
here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And do you still let her outside at all?
Well, right now we have a nice fenced-in yard.
Ah.
We used to have a few acres of land, and you'd let her out because my daughter was younger at the time. Let the dogs out while she's out playing, and then I got home one night, and there's my daughter. We're coming in, and Jack Russell runs into the house, just lays down. It's like, okay, that's weird. Just stopped, and you pick her up, and it's like, ooh, this is not good. So, yeah, a few extra lives there.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Mhm.
Actually, one of the first time I consulted an animal communicator friend for a living animal was we had Sadie, and it was the first summer we had Sadie. And again, we had the invisible fence, and she would, come in when she felt like it. But sometimes she'd be outside till like 2 and 3 in the morning, not coming in. We're calling and shaking food out there, like just won't come in. And we just look out the window, and she's just sitting. She's sitting out in the backyard, just looking around. And I have like an acre and a half, and I'm in the woods, and we have coyote and deer and wild turkey and lots of stuff. And we'd hear the coyotes, and we're like, Sadie, get the hell in here. We're trying to no. And so I finally asked someone, and so again, from the spiritual, the soul of Sadie's level, it was, you guys rescued me. I've got to stay out here and protect you. And so I opened her Akashic records and tried to say, no, you don't need to. We don't want you to get hurt. We worry more if you stay out all night. So please just come in. And again, this first time I opened my dog's Akashic records and like, oh, I'm not stupid. If there's more than 3, I come inside. But when there's just 1 or 2, I can stay out there and scare them off. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. But the bonds and honor and the reciprocal life force is there for all of them. And like Richard said, it's you have the ideal just dog that just there to be happy and remind you to be happy and in the moment. And then there can be other ones that have a bigger role to play, and not just for you, but in ways that we don't understand.
Right.
Freaky.
They're like,
Oh yes, very much so.
so Sterling Blue.
Out there, sorry, it's so cool. She just sit out there and say, "Nope, I'm doing my job."
No, and like on my boys, and they do watch and protect. Like they're going to come in the bedroom, or they're going to stay by the front door, or like Sterling really, even as really young puppy, he would tend to stay at the other end of the house, and he loved to be outdoors, and he guarded the backyard more than the other 2 older boys did. And I did get message on him from an animal communicator while he was still with us that. And it's interesting because Cameron and I noticed this and thought the same thing beforehand. She said that he sees spirits. So she said, like, where she said he gets confused sometimes outside because we see people or trees and rocks, whatever, but he's seeing spirits. So he's seeing, and I'd go out and take him out to potty or whatever in the backyard, and he's like looking up at the sky and barking and stuff like, okay, there's nothing around. It's not a tree, but he'd do it in the house, and we suspected that. So it's kind of interesting, like So when we get the message later, he's an old soul. It's like, who knows really what he was here and what he was really doing. So
That's cool. And in getting ready for this, I also like looked up some research and what do people not looking through their animal communicators viewpoint of their dogs, say there's the connection between everyone. And, humans and dogs just go back the most number of years as being this interdependent species. And that, dogs were the first domesticated animal and still are. And that there's one, I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but there's this one study that looked at, the genealogy of hundreds of thousands of years and says that as both species have relied on each other, the dog's brain has shrunk 20% because it's become domesticated and doesn't need to be so focused and hunting and gathering and it can just be the companion.
Okay.
and that the human
Wow.
brain has also shrunken because we could have someone else protecting us and we'd have to be alert all night. But the human brain has shrunken 10%. So it said, so the dogs got the better end of that deal. They could relax even more than we have. But I was like, well, if the story, the cliche, I don't know what to call it, about humans only using 10% of their brain, and our brain has also shrunk over time. So when was the 10% being used? Was that before or after we shrunk? But I'd never heard that.
Wow.
I'd never seen that level of study of,
Uh,
but just that it goes back like that far, and it's in the, our DNA has even changed. Our physical structure has changed by being able to rely on this non-human form.
very interesting.
It is.
Yeah, so that was trippy, but yeah. And I can get that, and that's why even the different cultures of people, and Richard talking about growing up in Tennessee and in more of the the farming and the outdoors and the the cowboy mentality and the hunting and the dog being at your side and doing its job, not necessarily just as companionship and just as not just as not seen as a family member, but more as someone working for you. But there's still the connections happen.
Right.
So do you see in the women or the girls in your life, do you see a similar bond with dogs, or is it somehow different for men?
I do see some, and I did mention earlier, Conrad, my first Sheltie, over 20 years ago. His brother, that I was really wanting that buy blue Sheltie, ended up being adopted by our neighbors, and that's how we connected with them. And it's interesting. I just got a text from her like in the last minute. She's been checking on me, and she lives in the northeast part of the country. And she's the one who told me to watch that movie that I watched. But so we have a strong connection here all these years, and we're both in new relationships since that time. But we had, the brothers, and I mean, to the point I just literally, like, within a minute, got a text from her, and but she's very much the same. And we talked last night for a while on text, and so she definitely has that strong connection.
Yeah.
I don't see it necessarily with everyone, but I mean, I've talked with customers and things that have the strong bonds. I think a lot of women do.
Yeah.
Probably as much as men.
Yeah. But
I see it with some.
So I think then maybe the better way to phrase it, or looking at what stands out to me, is that women are allowed to show that love, that connection to people, to dogs, to squirrels, to whatever it is that they want to show love for. But men aren't. Is that really true?
Yeah. I think that would be a distinction there of your question, and the whole thing with the show is that because men typically, and so much of the work that you do through this program, men just so much are not allowed to share the feelings. And I like what you shared with, your family at the movies, that, the grown men were crying. That was a time like, it's somewhat permissible, because the dog died, and even though they were kind of trying to cover it up afterwards. But
it was only permissible while nobody else saw them.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that's a difference. I think the women do have the feelings much like we do. It's just that they, it seems like by society's guidelines, they've had permission to do that, whereas men, we tend to think we don't have the permission to do that, and we haven't done that.
Do you see a difference in your parents' generation to your generation to the next generation in being allowed to show emotion for more than dogs?
I think so. I think there's a lot of change going on in our world right now that men are, and I think it's more recent is of what my personal experience is seeing. But I think it's growing more and more. I think we're seeing it more on, social media, television, movies, things like that. So I see a change, I think, for the good of what, this program's all about.
John, what about you? You seeing changes?
A little bit, I can't say that I've seen a lot of changes. I think that people are more and more willing to talk about it, at least. Not sure if it's a generational change or if it's just a change that society is making. Maybe more of the people that I'm around are more open about it. So maybe I'm more aware of it.
And you travel a lot for business and sometimes, manage large groups of people. Have you had the experience of someone showing up all choked up and I lost my dog yesterday. I can't work today?
I can't say that I have.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's been, not that I've had that experience. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was the one that did that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, no, I've done it too. Like I couldn't, again, when I lost Sadie, I couldn't go to the gym for 2 weeks because I knew people on Facebook and knew people were going to try to like hug me and say sorry. I'm like, no. And when I'm finally leaving my house, I can finally hold it together. But I can't hold it together if someone else is going to try to like, hey, how you feeling?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because when I told my manager, I'm hysterically crying, barely could get it out what was even going on with me, and I said I've got to leave. She said I understand. I said I won't be here tomorrow. That was all that was said. She said I understand. There was no question. And then I was already scheduled off 2 days after that, so it gave me at least about 4 days to kind of pull myself together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, I want to do something with that phrase, right? Because pull yourself to all these phrases that we're all used to saying, it makes it sound like that was wrong.
That's true. That does. Does by saying you got to pull yourself together.
Yeah. So I really no, you were. It was great that you had 4 days to grieve.
Yeah.
Right. Just the end, not to pretend you weren't or something. Right.
Not to go and fall apart and pull yourself together. It's just the process that you're going through.
Yeah.
Like you said, you couldn't go to the gym for a week.
And it was interesting, the day after we put Sterling, let him go, Cameron, my partner, and I both got up that morning, and we've been talking about space clearing for the longest time, and we need to get rid of so many things here in our house. And I don't know, we just started that day. I think part of it was like processing through some of the dog stuff and donating, and we both were kind of like wild, frantic, like, okay, I'm getting rid of this, I'm getting rid of this, I'm getting rid of this in a way. And to me, my thought process was, if I can let go of Sterling, I can let go of anything. There was nothing any more important in my life. If it was relationship, house, whatever, it's like, if I can let him go, I can now let anything go. And I had to do it the day before. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I really want to thank you both for coming here with such open hearts and minds and sharing so much of yourself, your experiences, your family members, your beloved furry friends, your boys.
The boys, the girls. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. My honor to be here. And I think because of people like yourself, Andy, and the work that you're doing, that the change that I talked about that I am seeing is occurring because of exactly people like you and the work that you're doing. And like Sean being here and myself, that we're talking about it, And
true.
if it's one conversation at a time, that's going to change the world eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not, if our connections with our dogs are so deep and powerful because as men we're not expected or allowed or encouraged to have that unconditional love with other people as easy, I'm not sure if I want to change. Like would I love my dog as much if I loved everybody just that same amount? I don't know.
Right.
The dog would still love you.
Oh, good point.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Yeah. Okay, you've convinced me. I can love everybody. Thank you both for joining me. Visit realmenfeel.org for and the blog notes will have links to Sean and Richard's websites. You can get in touch with them, learn more about what they're up to in the world. Because it's not just they don't. Richard, I might have to say I can't. I was going to say their lives don't revolve just around dogs, but maybe Richard's does, and that's okay. So Real Men Feel is brought to you by the Good Men Project. Visit goodmenproject.com for more of the conversations no one else is having. And until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of your dogs. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Real Men Feel. Until next week, visit realmenfeel.org or the Real Men Feel Facebook group and share what you thought of this episode. Please give this podcast a review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you are discovering Real Men Feel. Reach out to us at realmenfeel@gmail.com. Show us some love by visiting realmenfeel.org/swag or digitaltipjar.com/realmenfeel. Learn more about Andy Grant at theandygrant.com and Appio Hunter at appiohunter.com.